OpenAI says artificial general intelligence is closer than you think. Not in some distant sci-fi future, not locked behind a decade of breakthroughs, but close enough that you can already feel it brushing up against daily life. And whether people want to admit it or not, ChatGPT is already giving us a preview of what that future actually looks like. Because this did not start as a bold philosophical idea. It started as a tool, quietly, almost politely. Then it spread everywhere. Since its launch, ChatGPT has turned into something strange and unprecedented. It writes production code that ships. It tutors students one-on-one at scale. It assists doctors by summarizing research and flagging diagnostic possibilities. It helps scientists reason through hypotheses, literature, and experimental design. This is not one domain. This is many. And that matters because intelligence is not about doing one thing well. It is about transferring skill across contexts. Back in 2020, GPT-3 shocked the world simply by producing coherent language. At the time, that alone felt unreal. But GPT-3 could not really reason. It could not see. It could not interact in real time. It was impressive, but limited. Then GPT-4 arrived and changed the tone of the conversation. Multimodal reasoning meant the system could understand text and images together, follow complex instructions, and maintain far deeper context. It stopped feeling like autocomplete and started feeling like thought. Not human thought, but something adjacent enough to be uncomfortable. Then GPT-5 pushed it further. Real-time capabilities, faster response loops, more fluid interaction, less friction between intent and execution. This is the part people tend to underestimate. Intelligence does not just live in answers. It lives in timing, in back and forth, in collaboration. When latency drops and coherence rises, the experience changes completely. Sam Altman has said something that should have landed harder than it did. He said that the ChatGPT people use today would have been considered AGI just 5 years ago. That is not marketing, that is perspective. It tells you how fast the goalposts are moving and how quickly yesterday's impossible becomes today's baseline. Now here is where the story turns forward. OpenAI has laid out a roadmap that feels less like speculation and more like sequencing. By 2026, their systems are expected to function like AI research interns. Not tools, interns. Systems that actively help generate new knowledge, propose experiments, test ideas, and iterate alongside humans. That is a major shift. When an AI can assist in creating knowledge, not just retrieving it, the acceleration compounds. And by 2028, the target moves again. Fully autonomous AI researchers. Systems capable of running meaningful portions of the research loop on their own. Hypothesis, experimentation, refinement. This is what Altman refers to as personal AGI. Not a godlike intelligence ruling the world, but a collaborator that thinks with you. One that adapts to your goals, your style, your blind spots. Pause on that idea for a moment, because this is where tension lives. The definition of AGI is a moving target. Some people argue we already crossed the line. Others insist that true AGI requires surpassing human intelligence across every domain, not just matching it in many. There is no consensus, and there probably never will be. Every time systems improve, the bar quietly rises to stay just out of reach. But definitions do not stop momentum. What is undeniable is the curve. The progress is exponential. Each year, the system feels less like a chatbot and more like a colleague. Less like software and more like something you work with. The friction keeps dropping. The usefulness keeps rising. The scope keeps widening. And here is the uncomfortable truth hiding underneath the debate. You do not need to call it AGI for it to reshape how work, research, and creativity function. You only need it to be good enough, cheap enough, and available enough. That threshold is much closer than most people think. Right now, we are still in the phase where humans lead and AI assists, but the handoff points are shifting. First drafting, then reasoning, then exploration, then discovery. Each step looks small on its own. Together, they add up to something transformative. So the real question is not whether AGI arrives with a headline and a clear timestamp. The real question is whether we notice the moment when we stop working alone, because that moment is already starting.